Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to say hello and say, gosh, I hope you had a great weekend. It's another week of classes from home, classes from my home, and videos on YouTube. You guys are doing a great job. This is not an easy time, and the longer we spend in our houses and unable to do a lot of the things we want to do, the more difficult I think it can become. So I just want to give you guys a lot of credit. I don't know all of what everybody's doing every single day like I normally would at school if we were in school, but certainly I've heard from most of you. Well, actually, I've heard from all of you at some point, at some time, in some fashion, text, phone, Zoom meetings, emails, and in many cases, I've heard from you several times with different assignments or phone call check-ins and reviews, Zoom meetings. You're definitely involved in keeping up at different levels with what we're expecting, and so we do have about 6 or 7 more weeks of this, maybe more, 8 weeks, I guess, until we get to the middle of June 18th. So we're going to continue pressing on like this, and I'm really hopeful that you'll improve and you'll get better at checking emails, completing assignments, joining us in the Zoom chats, connecting with me on Fridays by phone. And I'm certainly hopeful that you'll continue to work on your day-to-day activities and assignments that I've given you, not just the ones like this on videos, but you have your checklist, right? That checklist is a good guide for you to structure your day and keeping active and keeping involved, keeping your brain stimulated with something other than electronics, right? We can get wrapped into our electronics, phone, computer, video games, you name it. But get outside to do some exercise. Do some things around the house that don't involve electronics, like some home chores, laundry, and cleaning your room, and helping in the kitchen. Maybe helping outside in the yard can be a home chore and exercise all in one. Helping with the grocery list each week is really important too. Jot down the things that you want to eat for lunch, and maybe even expand it to things you want to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and write it down for your parents. Put a list together. Go through your refrigerator, your cabinets, your freezer. See what you have. Give your mom and dads a break since you're home and you have the time. Sit down at the table, just like we would at Links, and see if you can put together a grocery list. I would certainly encourage you to get out of your house and to the grocery store. Maybe, make sure you go with your parents, but take the precautions you need, whether it be a mask or gloves, hand sanitizer or wipes. But there's ways to do that safely, and get back in the grocery store if you haven't been doing that. I would encourage you to watch the news. I wouldn't dwell on it too much or spend hours doing it, but a good half hour a day is good, and maybe have some conversation at home with your family about it. Those are great things to do that are different from class assignments or video games or checking social media. It's real live news that is important to us, and it's happening daily, and things are changing, and your world is changing around you, and it's affecting you, and so keeping up with it's important. And then obviously, taking care of your families and doing things with your families and spending time with them, checking in on people that you're not in the home with, maybe relatives, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, by phone or by Zoom. There's ways to connect and stay social. It's a great way to practice your social skills. And then I've provided you with some websites, thatquiz.com, practicalmoneyskills.com. Certainly you can go on ONET and YouTube and do some career research. Look up jobs maybe that you're interested in. I know you've done some of that before in the past, but continue to explore, continue to find out what the tasks are and what the requirements are and what the salary is, what the educational requirements are. Write it down, keep a little log of what you're doing. This will all be beneficial to you if and when we come back to school someday, hopefully in June, September. But it'll help you with keeping on top of your career research. And again, those other websites I gave you, practicing money skills, time skills. I know the practical money skills game, practical money skills, I think is the name of the website. I put it in your new chart. Has a great game called Financial Football, and it's a video game in a sense, but it's involving money skills, and it's going to kind of test your knowledge of things in the area of finances and banking and budgeting and money skills related topics. So that's a good game to play, and it's kind of fun, and probably can knock out a good half hour, an hour or so doing that. So I encourage you to keep up with those things on a daily basis. Certainly writing emails every day to me and your parents would be great to include and update them on what you're doing each day. You guys did a great job of that back in Links. Every afternoon you'd write an email, and there's no reason why you can't keep doing that now with the time that you have at home. All right, so I'm going to shift a little bit now towards the lesson for today. And if you're watching this now, you got the email I sent you related to self-determination and self-advocacy. This is something that we've talked about at Links in the past, and I wanted to do a lesson on this. This is going to be part one of the lesson, and as you can see in the email, I've sent you some attachments that are your assignments for this lesson. But I wanted to just do a quick introduction to self-determination and self-advocacy. Those two terms are sort of interchangeable. We'll talk a little bit about what those mean and just a general idea of what the lesson's going to be about. And then I'm going to share with you a PowerPoint which will set up the assignment. And the PowerPoint is in your email as well that you can see. And if you can pull that up at any time and reference that if you need to. But so what is self-advocacy and self-determination? Well, it's really about knowing yourself and being able to, whether it be speak up for yourself, defend yourself, express your needs, express your wants, be a voice, have a voice for yourself that communicates to other people that you know what you want, know what you need. Well, how do you do that? It's not easy to do, right? Not everybody's really good at that. And I think the first thing that has to be understood with self-advocacy and self-determination is that you have to know who you are and what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your fears are, what your likes and dislikes are. And so this is really important in understanding self-advocacy and self-determination. It doesn't happen overnight. As you grow, you guys are in your 20s now, 19, 20, 21. You've lived a good amount of time now, and you've gone through school for the most part, and you're becoming adults, and you're starting to understand, hopefully now, more about who you are. Now, I'm going to throw the word disability in there, and each of you obviously has a disability. And but I don't want to dwell too much on the disability today or what it is. I think each of you knows what you have been diagnosed with. But I want to say something about how what you've been diagnosed with and who you are almost really two different things. Because what the disability is far less important than how the disability affects you and what you need as a young adult to manage that disability. And so it's great to know what it is and not run from it. It's who you are. Everybody has something, trust me, whether it's a diagnosed disability or some fear or weakness in some area. We all have unique strengths and weaknesses that make us who we are. My eyesight is going, right? So I need glasses so I can see. I'm not afraid of that. I'm not embarrassed by that. It's an accommodation that I have that helps me to see just like people who have 100% vision. Some people have hearing aids to make sure that their hearing can be 100%. Some people, their legs maybe don't work well, or one of their arms don't work well, so they have some type of a wheelchair or some type of a assistive device to help them level the playing field. And so it's less about the disability and the name of it, and more about how it affects you and what it means for you. And so that's really what kind of this lesson is about, and understanding what makes you unique and what makes you tick. And so, but again, I people in this world today, they hear the word disability, and it's comes across sometimes to people as a very negative thing, something to be embarrassed about. And I want to put that notion to rest a little bit. It's really not something to be afraid of. It's not something to be embarrassed about. It's who you are, and it does not prevent you from being a unique, talented, special, and productive young adult and older adult in the life that you have ahead of you. You guys are all incredibly talented in different ways, and you have to learn, and as you are now, how to manage your disability, how to understand what makes it, how it affects you, and how to accommodate for it. And we'll talk about that more. But it should not define you, and it should not prevent you from being successful. And so that's kind of where we're going to shift into now is, can you be successful if you have a disability? Well, I'm going to say absolutely you can. It's not going to be handed to you. No one's just going to hand you success. You're going to have to work at it. You're going to have to maybe work even harder to overcome certain things because of your disability. But it's not something that's going to define you or should define you if you don't want it to. And in fact, you can be incredibly successful. Incredibly successful, I'll say that twice, with a disability. Whether it be working part-time, working full-time, owning your own home, or maybe we'll start off with, say, having your own apartment, and then maybe someday owning your own home, having a family. There's endless limits to what people can do that have disabilities. And so what I'm going to do with you today is I'm going to show you some people that you're probably going to recognize that have disabilities, significant disabilities. But I want you to think about, and you're going to see them in a minute, just how famous they've become despite the fact that they had a disability. And they had to work very hard in their field, whether it be science or sports or entertainment, to manage and know who they were because of their disability, what their needs were, what they had to accomplish, what they had to overcome to be successful. It doesn't mean you're going to become a famous actor or a famous scientist or a famous writer. You might. I don't know that. Nobody really knows at this point. But the point of me showing it to you is that it's out there and it can be a possibility. It doesn't have to mean you're going to have a life of failure and you're going to have a life of sadness and a life of, failure in a sense. There's absolutely no reason why that has to be the case. You can be successful, and what I'm going to show you now is living proof of that. Okay, so let's get started. The first person, you guys have probably seen this person before, and again, this is in your PowerPoint, in your email, so you have it for yourself, but I just want to walk you through it right now. You're probably thinking Albert Einstein, right? Yeah, that's Albert Einstein. All right. And Albert Einstein, if you can see, I want to make sure you can see that. You see that? The brightness. He had dyslexia, ADD, and autism. Okay, so he had 3 diagnosed disability, right? Dyslexia, which is like a reading disability, ADD, which affected his attention. He had a hard time focusing and attending, which some of you guys might be able to relate to. And he had autism, right? So some of you guys can relate to that as well, right? So here's a guy who became one of the most famous people in the world, brilliant mind, and he had those disabilities. This woman here you may not know. She goes back to, she really became famous, and I think in a way because of the husband that she had there in the picture here. This is one of the presidents we had back in the 70s. His name was Gerald Ford. But she had a very difficult time managing her alcohol. So she was had an addiction to alcohol, and she started the Betty Ford Clinic for people who had addictions. Might even have expanded beyond alcohol. But so she took her addiction, her struggle with that, and turned it into a positive. This person here, you may recognize. He was an Olympic track runner back in the 70s. He's gone on to become famous, I believe, as an adult later on in his life for marrying a famous Kardashian, the Kardashian family. He's the kind of a stepfather to the Kardashian family. But his name is Bruce Jenner, and he also had dyslexia. So I'm sure school was really challenging for him. Reading was difficult, taking tests was difficult, but he had great athletic ability, and he overcame that disability and became a world-class athlete. You may recognize this woman. She's a famous singer and actress, I believe. Her name is Cher. And I believe Cher also had, let's see, what was her disability? Dyslexia. Yeah, dyslexia, and what else did she have? I can't see that bottom part. Maybe you guys can see it better. But she clearly had dyslexia. Maybe a learning disability. Okay, a learning disability. All right, so school was not easy for her. But despite that, she was able to read music and become a famous musician and actress. You can't be an actress without being able to read your lines. So how did she do that? Well, she probably had to have either people read it to her, or she learned learning strategies to read herself. Maybe she had to listen to it rather than read it with her eyes. She just listened to the lines so she could memorize them. So there's ways to accommodate. You guys know all about accommodations given your time in school. Okay? All right. This was one of our famous presidents back in the, I believe in the 40s, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But you can see up here in this picture here that he was in a wheelchair. All right. Later on in his life, he became inflicted with a disease called polio. And polio did quite a number on your physical abilities to walk, and it took away your strength, and I believe it ended up killing him. But he served as president of the United States while he was battling that disease. So certainly the disability that he had did not prevent him from being successful. This was a woman here on the left-hand side, here and here on the right. Her name, you may not recognize her, but you've probably heard her name. Her name is Helen Keller. And she was blind, and she was deaf, and essentially mute, meaning she couldn't speak. But there's a picture of her there with one of our former presidents, Dwight Eisenhower. All right, and there's Helen Keller. Like I said, she had physical, deaf, blind, and mute. But I believe Helen Keller was a writer of books, right? She, incredible. Couldn't see, couldn't talk, couldn't hear, but was involved in book writing as a writer. And we know this guy, I'm sure, former president back in the 60s, John F. Kennedy. And he also had a disability. He had a physical disability. It was called, let's see if I can get that for you. It had to do with his leg. I think it's called Addison's disease. And it affected his back. His physically, he was in a lot of pain a lot of the time. So he had also served in the military when he was younger and ended up having a back issue. He got injured in a rescue mission, and then developed this disease, which really hurt him in his term. It was just a lot of pain, chronic pain throughout his body, but I think it was really in his back. So he had to give speeches, and he had to stand and walk a lot, and it was hard for him. And you may or may not know this guy. This is a famous basketball player from the 70s and 80s and early 90s. His name is Magic Johnson. He played for the Lakers. And Magic Johnson, he had ADD and ADHD and dyslexia. So he had a hard time. School was really tough for him. Sitting still was difficult, focusing was difficult, and reading was difficult. But he, was blessed with great athletic ability, and he persevered through those times. And I know he became the owner of the team at one point, coach of the team. He's become a very successful businessman, so he's certainly had to do a lot of reading and speaking and paying attention, even though he's got those disabilities. And I think the most famous disability, or really not a disability, but an infliction that he has, is he has the HIV virus. He got that back when he was playing in the 90s, and he has treatments for that, medical treatments for that, that's he's been taking now for 20-something years to keep him healthy. So he has an additional illness that affected him in a physical way, and that was HIV/AIDS. So that's Magic Johnson. And this guy, old school, this is before any of our times, but he was a musician, Beethoven, right? And Beethoven, what did he have? Oh, sorry. Beethoven, I think he was also, he was deaf. Imagine that. So he became a famous musician without being able to hear. Think about that, right? Music is all about what you hear, right? Making rhythm, making music, making sound. And he couldn't hear, but he became one of the most famous musicians of all time. And similar to him, you may recognize this man here. His name is Stevie Wonder. He does wear dark glasses, inside and out. He's one of the rare people that can wear inside dark glasses because he's blind. And with his glasses off, his eyes are a little disfigured, so he doesn't like people to see them. So he wears his glasses, and he's become famous for them. But he's an incredible writer of songs, singer of songs. He plays the piano. He's got a great voice, and he's done that all without ever being able to see. This is an actor you may recognize: Mission Impossible, Risky Business, Top Gun, Tom Cruise. Again, in order to be an actor, you've got to read tons of lines and memorize tons of lines. And even though he had dyslexia, he was able to do that. And I believe that's the end. Okay, so I wanted to show you those people, men and women, all who have at least one or maybe even multiple significant disabilities. But gosh, when you think of Magic Johnson or Beethoven or Tom Cruise, we think actor or actress or athlete or musician. We don't think disabled. We don't think dyslexia or ADHD. We don't think autism, because that's not who they are. They've gone on and become famous and talented and use their gifts and strengths to become successful people in lives, and that's really what's important. Now, through all of their journeys, just like your journeys, they've had to learn how to manage their disabilities. And so we're going to talk more about that at another time. But for now, I'm glad you tuned in to part in this session. Again, you have that PowerPoint with those celebrities. But the assignment I've given you now, I explained it in the email, but I'll do it here as well again. It is a worksheet where you now have to go and research a famous person that has a disability. Use the internet. This might take you a little time, so don't get frustrated. But when you find somebody that is on the internet and they have a disability, it could be a disability that you know, or maybe something that you don't know. I prefer it not to be a person on that worksheet, in that PowerPoint. Try to find somebody different. And then I gave you a worksheet with some questions that I'd like you to answer based on your research. Okay? And so that's something I want you to work on. And take your time with it. You may or may not have enough time to do it in one sitting. Work on it for a little while and then come back to it if you want. And so that's kind of part one of the assignment for a couple of you. You'll see it in your email. I've specified a little bit for each student what to do. So everybody's going to do that. And then there's an additional assignment for a couple of you, and you'll see that in your email that goes a little bit beyond the worksheet. So again, read the email. It's specific to you. This video is the general instruction for you that applies to everybody, but your assignment is kind of unique to each of you, and it's spelled out in the email. So I hope that makes sense. And again, anytime you have any questions, I'm completely available by phone, by text, by email. If you have a question about what you're supposed to do, or something you didn't understand, please let me know. Okay? So good luck with that. I'm looking forward to seeing what you send me for your work assignment. And then what's going to come after this is a part 2 of this, which gets into a little bit more of you specifically and your disability and how it affects you in your life. So that'll be part 2 coming up later this week or next week sometime. All right? See you later, guys.